Politicians are supposed to serve the people, but that's never stopped some of them from using their power for nefarious purposes. Whether they're a brutal dictator or the governor of New York, plenty of once beloved politicians have shown their true colors over the years. The late Senator John McCain spent time as a POW during the Vietnam War, served in Congress for 35 years, and received the Republican nomination for the presidency in 2008. When he died in 2018, his funeral was a major event, with some 2,000 of Washington, D.C.'s most important people attending the service in the National Cathedral. However, there have been several controversies involving McCain over the years. For one, he was a member of the Keating Five, implicated in a savings and loan scandal in the 1980s. In his personal life, he left his first wife, Carol, for the decades younger Cindy Hensley, proposing to her while still married. Carol was devastated.
I didn't know anything about it. I had no idea what was going on. I was pretty much blindsided, and it broke my heart.
McCain's use of racist language was also a constant issue. He regularly used a slur to refer to the Vietnamese before finally being called out on it in 1999. He did apologize, but only after first claiming he had a right to use it before getting even more criticism in the process. Nevertheless, he doubled down once again after he was called out for a racist tweet about the Iranian president in 2013. When running against Barack Obama in 2008, McCain often included his opponent's middle name, Hussein, while speaking about him, along with other dog whistles he was accused of using. All this was in addition to his controversial voting record. He was infamously against the creation of both Martin Luther King Jr. Day in 1983 and the Civil Rights Act of 1990. Plenty of politicians have been caught cheating on their spouses, but there's a big difference between sex scandals involving consenting adults and the kind that leads to criminal charges. Anthony Weiner managed to blow up his life and career by engaging in both kinds of infidelity. At one point, Weiner was considered a rising star in the Democratic Party. He was the youngest person ever elected to the New York City Council in 1991, and he went on to win a U.S. House seat in 1998. He was still serving in the House when his first sex scandal blew up in 2011. Many more scandals would follow over the next several years. They ranged from sex sent to women who were not his wife, to physical affairs, to sending sexual material to a girl he knew was under 18. While the scandals saw him resign from Congress, get destroyed in the race for the mayor of New York City, and go through a divorce, it was only the case involving a minor that resulted in Weiner facing federal charges. He pled guilty, was sentenced to 21 months in prison, and is now a registered sex offender. According to his ex-wife Huma Abedin, Weiner's actions were even more out of control than the public knew. She told People magazine, "I was always bracing for the next bad news call, the next piece of, 'Aha, we discovered this.' As time went on, his behavior got more and more dangerous, and look where it led."
I had a blind spot about it, and that blind spot was a pretty big one.
Dennis Hastert still holds the Republican record for longest tenured Speaker of the House in U.S. history. For 8 years, he was just 2 heartbeats away from the presidency. While there were some scandals during his tenure, including the revelation that he had known Representative Mark Foley was sexually harassing male pages and had not done anything about it, Hastert only retired in 2007 because his party lost the majority. He became a lobbyist, and his career seemed pretty well set by Washington standards. Then, in 2014, the FBI noticed Hastert was covering up some huge cash withdrawals. This was an illegal act by itself, but it was nothing compared to the reason he was taking out the money in the first place. Hastert had been paying millions in hush money to a man whom he had sexually abused decades before, and he wasn't the only victim. Hastert would eventually be accused of abusing at least 5 boys as young as 14 when he was their high school wrestling coach in the 1960s and 70s. No charges could be filed for these crimes because of the statute of limitations, but Hastert was charged with the related financial crimes and sentenced to 15 months in prison. He admitted to what he'd done at his sentencing. During the hearing, the judge stated, "Some actions can obliterate a lifetime of good works. Nothing is more stunning than having serial child molester and Speaker of the House in the same sentence." Indira Gandhi is the only woman to have been Prime Minister of India, and she's often ranked highly in polls of the greatest Indians of all time. In 1999, a BBC survey ranked her the greatest woman of the millennium. She was just as revered during her lifetime. A 1971 Gallup poll found she was the most admired person on Earth.
But I don't think we can exist without dreams. I don't think we can exist without vision.
Gandhi was the daughter of India's first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru. She continued the nepotism trend by elevating her younger son to political prominence, and after he died in an accident, she did the same with her older son. Ultimately, this favoritism made her cabinet a laughingstock. More concerning is how Gandhi dealt with the many problems she faced while in office, by using brute force. In 1975, when she was in danger of being overthrown due to protests against her, she called a national emergency. She used almost dictatorial power to censor the press, arrest protesters, and force the sterilization of men and women. She delayed the election that may very well have thrown her out, while at the same time forcing local elections so her political enemies could be replaced with allies. She even changed the Constitution in an attempt to retroactively make her election fraud legal. In 1994, journalist and author Arun Shourie told the Los Angeles Times, "Her legacy is a sort of continuous ruin. She did more than anyone else to destroy institutions in India." As New York Attorney General, Eliot Spitzer gained fame for taking on Wall Street corruption. By the time he won the governor's race in 2006, his name was being thrown around as a future Democratic presidential nominee. The New Yorker ran a glowing 12,000-word profile on him after his first year as governor. Then it came out that Spitzer had spent huge amounts of money, possibly as much as $80,000 over a 10-year period, patronizing sex workers. He was far from the first or last politician to pay for sex, of course. But what made Spitzer's case so much worse was the hypocrisy of it all. As Attorney General, Spitzer had not only broken up sex trafficking rings, but had pushed for stronger laws to combat the problem by going after the men who patronized escort services. By the time the changes passed, he was governor and signed them into law himself. That made it quite a shock for New Yorkers when he ended up being caught doing the exact thing that he was publicly making sure others were prosecuted for. To say the women's organizations he worked with felt betrayed by him would be an understatement. Spitzer was never charged, but his reputation was seriously damaged. He told The Observer, "I point the finger only at myself for having given them the ammunition to do it. I'm responsible for what I did." Alberto Fujimori was president of Peru for almost the entirety of the 1990s. His election was a complete shock, considering that he was polling at barely 1% not even 2 months before. His overnight success was far from fleeting. For almost all of the 90s, Fujimori was hugely popular, even as he broke campaign promises and life for Peruvians didn't actually get much better. After 2 years of dealing with the normal difficulties of politics, Fujimori decided it would be easier if he were a dictator, so he called a national emergency. He then made sure his loyalists won elections and even redrafted the country's constitution. He had hundreds of thousands of mostly indigenous Peruvian women forcibly sterilized. Then there were the death squads. Fujimori was behind massacres, torture, and kidnappings. His wife even denounced him, accused him of abuse, and divorced him in the middle of his presidency. Eventually, Fujimori's corruption and cruelty did bring him down, and he fled to Japan in 2000. He was returned to Peru in 2007 to stand trial for abuse of power, later being charged with human rights violations and receiving a 25-year sentence. However, his hold over a large chunk of the Peruvian people was still evident. Fujimori's daughter has come very close to winning the presidency herself a few times. Some of his former administration officials are still in government, and the political party he started holds many seats in the country's parliament. When Fujimori was controversially released from prison early in 2023, many of his supporters took to the streets to celebrate. Andrew Cuomo had politics in his blood, specifically the governorship of New York. Decades earlier, his father Mario held the same position that Andrew won in 2010. In 2020, Cuomo became a worldwide figure when he started holding daily televised briefings on the state of the coronavirus pandemic. He won an International Emmy Award for his broadcasts and gained a swooning fan base of primarily middle-aged women that called themselves Cuomosexuals. This would not age well. A year later, Cuomo resigned from the governorship. His Emmy Award was rescinded, and the Cuomosexuals had mostly disappeared. An independent state investigation looking into allegations of sexual harassment found that Cuomo was constantly inappropriately touching, propositioning, or saying sexual things to the women who worked for him and for the state. The accusations of 11 different women were substantiated, and a further investigation by the Department of Justice came to the same conclusion. Even worse, it was proven that Cuomo retaliated against women who complained about his conduct. The governor took no responsibility for his actions, saying they were either lies or misunderstandings. While he swore he would not leave office, he soon resigned his position, but he made it clear that he wasn't happy about it.
I am a fighter, and my instinct is to fight this because it is unfair and unjust in my mind.
Years later, Cuomo is still loudly trashing everyone involved in the investigations, from the attorney general to his accusers. He's also started planning his political comeback. Warren G. Harding had the perfect look and voice for a politician. He worked his way up the political ranks, and in 1920 he was selected as the Republican candidate for president in a backroom deal. Regardless of the shady way he got the nomination, the public loved him, and he got 60% of the vote in the general election. Harding's death in 1923 meant he didn't have to face the consequences of his massive corruption. The Teapot Dome scandal is the most famous of his misdeeds, but it was just one of many. Seemingly everyone in the Harding administration was getting kickbacks, and several of them went on trial, served time, or died died by suicide. These days, historians consistently rank Harding as one of the worst presidents in U.S. history. Then there was his personal life. There was a conspiracy theory about Harding's death that claimed his wife killed him, but if she had her reasons. Harding had many mistresses, including one Carrie Fulton Phillips, with whom he had a relationship for 15 years. As president, Harding had to try harder to hide his dark secrets, like sleeping with his aides. One of his affairs resulted in a secret child the year before he entered the White House. While the public refused to believe this allegation after Harding's death, DNA tests proved he was the father in 2015.